Back in the garage today, back in the garage today. What's going on, guys? Back in the garage today, working on my 2021 KTM 890 Adventure R. What I'm going to be doing in today's video is showing you how to remove the wheels and also reinstall the wheels on it. Reasons you might have to do that is maybe you want to get your tires changed, you want to save a little bit of money taking it to your dealership, mechanic, whatever. If you take them off the bike yourself, save a little bit of money. Or in my case, I'm going to replace my own tires today. Fortunately, I have my own tire changer. The front tire is under recall, and the rear tire, that thing's just shot. So let's hop into it. Okay, so we're going to start here on the rear wheel. You got a couple of options. If you decided to get the center stand for it, you can just put it up on the center stand. In my case, I've got some spools on it and a rear wheel stand. There are other options out there that you can research, but in my case, this is what I'm going to use. We're going to start out by removing the rear wheel speed sensor or ABS sensor. We're going to use a Torx 30-bit, spin this out. We just really want to get it out of the way so we don't take the chance of damaging it. All you do is just pull it straight out, and I'm just going to tuck it over here out of place. Next up, we're going to need a 32mm socket. That's going to go over our rear axle bolt right there. I'm just going to use a breaker bar, and we're going to break this loose and then start to spin it off. Alright, so with that off, we can go ahead and pull out a little block plate here, and then we're going to grab a hammer and just tap on the rear axle a little bit to start to get it popped out of place. Alright, so with my rubber mallet here, I'm just going to tap on that. Now I'm going to give you a view on the other side. Okay, so we want to make sure this is far enough out, because what I want to do is I want to slide the axle forward a bit, and that should allow me to get the chain off of the rear sprocket here. There we go. I just want to set that down there for right now. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull this axle out a little further. Now when I'm pulling the wheel off, the rotor is sitting here in the caliper. I just got to make sure I'm pulling that straight down, and then I'm going to kind of have to tilt the tire out of the way a bit. And it should just roll back out of place. And we got the rear wheel removed. Now something I want to show you so you don't lose it, we do have a wheel spacer right here. You're probably just going to want to pull that out and set it aside. Okay, so now we're ready to work on removing the front wheel. Now you notice a couple of things. One, I'm using my Pitbull front stand. While I do have the stem attachment for it, unfortunately it's not long enough to work on this bike. You also notice I have a jack back here with a piece of wood. That's just helped to disperse the weight a little bit. That's not actually holding anything. It's just there as added safety should this front stand slide out for any reason once the wheel's off. So starting here on the left-hand side of the bike, we're going to use a Torx 30-bit, and we're going to take out the front wheel speed sensor here. All you do is just simply slide it out, and then we're just going to let it hang there for a moment. Again, we just don't want to take the chance of damaging it when we go to remove the wheel. Now this next part is somewhat optional. You can get the wheel off without removing the brake calipers, but I just find it much easier to put the wheel back on without the brake calipers on and then put the calipers on. So if you want to do it my way, you're going to need a Torx T45 bit to remove these two bolts. If you just want to leave them on there, that's fine too, and you can just skip to the next step. And then for right now, we're just going to let it hang there until we get the wheel off, and then I'll show you what to do with it next. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Alright, so now grabbing that same 32mm socket we used in the back, we're going to use it up front here and break the front axle loose. Won't take a whole lot. And then this bolt actually threads into the axle. So what I like to do is thread it out a little bit. And with that threaded out a little bit, we've got 10mm pinch bolts here on the bottom of each fork. We are going to start to spin these out a few rotations on each side. I'm going to come over and do it on the right hand side of the fork as well. Okay, so now with your pinch bolts good and loose on each side, I'm leaving the axle nut in there for a minute, and I'm just going to tap on it, and it's going to help. I'll bring the camera around to the other side. It's going to help drive the axle through. Okay, so you can see where my axle's coming through here. Now, if you're not able to drive it out that far, because sometimes they will be a little tight, I've found that if you take a 19mm deep well socket, once you've removed this axle bolt and drive it through on this side, it should help you drive it out a little bit. Now all we're gonna do is try to work this out. Crap, that's what I was afraid of. All right, so I believe the camera was rolling when that front fork popped out, or the front fork stand popped out. Glad I had the jack back there. The jack seems to be holding it just fine. So obviously just pull the axle through, and then we're just gonna roll the wheel out. I'm gonna flip it around to show you. We do have a spacer right here. We can go ahead and pull it out and set it aside. Now, let me show you one more thing here before I go change these tires out. I don't really like the brake calipers hanging here, so just take one of the bolts or two of them, whatever works for you, and just start to thread it in a little bit. That way it doesn't have pressure on the line. Do that on both sides. All right, guys, so that's how you remove the wheels on one of these bikes. The jack method actually works just fine. That's what I normally use on my 990 and 1290. Wasn't sure if it was going to work on the 890, which is why I tried the front fork stand, which I think didn't work worth a damn. So grab yourself a jack and I think you'll be just fine. Just maybe get yourself a block of wood to disperse the weight, because we all know that factory skid plate's not very thick. So anyway, we're gonna come back in just a few seconds in this video once I get my tires swapped out and show you how to put these things back on. Okay, so we're ready to remount our wheels now that we got some fresh tires on. We do want to grab our spacer and put that back in on the ABS side. Also, we're going to pull these bolts out that are holding the calipers in for right now, make it a little bit easier. Now with a lightly greased axle, we're going to start to insert this. Try to get ourselves lined up here. Use the hammer to tap, make sure you're good and lined up. Tap it in so the axle is flush. Now what I'm going to do is go ahead and use the jack and lower this back down. You don't have to lower it all the way back down, just enough to get a little bit of pressure on the front wheel. Once again, a little bit of grease, as you can see, on the axle nut. Spin that in by hand. I'm going to take the socket and just go ahead and spin it in just a little bit tighter. The pinch bolts here on the right hand side of the bike is where I'm going to turn in first. Once again, these are 10mm, and we're going to torque these down to 15 newton meters. Now, because we're dealing with this softer metal, we might have to torque them down a few times because it is going to pull the metal a little bit. So let's get this. Alright, we've got that side torqued down. Okay, next we're going to grab the 32mm socket. We're going to torque the axle nut down to 45 newton meters. There we go. And now the pinch bolts over on this side. Once again, we're going to torque these down to 15 newton meters. Now we're going to come over here and grab our left side brake caliper. We're going to make sure we get the pads down, and obviously check your pads at this point. If they need replaced, replace them. Otherwise, we're going to slide this down over, and we're just going to start these two bolts by hand. Again, these are Torx T45 bits, and we are also going to torque these down to 45 newton meters. Good idea to put a little bit of Loctite on these as well. Now, because we're already on this side, we're going to take our wheel speed sensor, push that back into place, and then while it calls for 10 newton meters, I normally just hand tighten these. There we go. Alright, so now back over on the right hand side of the bike. Once again, check your brake pads, and then we're going to slide the caliper down over the rotor. Get the top bolt just thread it in by hand. Same thing with the bottom. Now we're going to thread them in all the way, and then once again torque that down to 45 Newton meters using a little bit of Loctite. Alright, we're done with the front wheel. We're ready to move on to the rear wheel. Okay, so with the front lowered all the way back down, the rear wheel, the first thing we need to do is grab our spacer that goes back in over here on the ABS side. This is always the fun one. We kind of got to get it in here and clear the brake caliper first. Keep the chain over out of the way. Remove that handle so I can get in here a little closer. And now what we got to do is raise the rotor up in between the brake pads on the brake caliper and then get everything lined up. And then we need a freshly greased axle. Get the chain on. There's a lot of stuff to do back here on the back. So let's see if we can get this. If I can at least get it started, it's a good spot to be in. Get everything. Slide that back. This is where the hammer comes in handy. Hear it knocking there a little bit. Got that in place. Now we're just going to slide this forward because we need to get our chain back on. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to tap this back out. So we slide this forward just a little bit further. Alright, now we got the chain back on, we can pull the axle back. Obviously at this point in time, you know, when we go to put this back on, you want to check your chain tension. Mine was pretty good starting out, so we'll probably just leave it where it's at. Drive that back in. We've got our block over here. We want to make sure that's good and tight, and for the moment, we're just going to take our axle nut and just kind of put it on there hand tight. Okay, so before we lock everything down, I'm going to go ahead and grab my rear wheel speed sensor. I'm going to slide that back into place. I'm going to take my T30 Torx bit. Once again, it calls for 10 Newton meters back here, but I just tighten them down hand tight. There we go. And one thing I like to do, it's going to be a little hard to see, I like to take about a 10 millimeter wrench and just hook it in there between the chain and sprocket to provide some tension. And then we're going to torque this rear axle nut down to 90 Newton meters, which is about 66 foot-pounds of torque. There we go. And then obviously pull that wrench back out. Alright guys, so that is how you remove and then reinstall the wheels on one of these KTM 890 Adventure Rs, working on 890 Adventure, the 790 models, and obviously the Norden 901. Pretty much the same process for all the KTM Adventure bikes. So whether you're taking your wheels off because you're going to replace the tires, have the dealer replace the tires, or maybe you're replacing rotors, whatever the case may be, fairly simple, fairly straightforward process. If you've got the center stand, you can use the center stand along with the jack, kind of like I did. Or in my case, I don't have a center stand. I use the rear wheel stand with spools along with the jack. Works great. Same thing I use on that 1290 sitting right there in my 990 as well. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. If you're not a subscriber, considering that subscribe button, because if you like motorcycles, well, this is the place to be. If you have any questions about the process, let me know down in the comment section below. And as always, I'll talk to you again soon.